Hey guys, welcome to another unboxing. We have pearl expert Gina LaTendresse, and today she's going to be showing us some amazing all-natural pearls.
Are you ready to dive into natural pearls today?
Yes. All right, what do we have here? Oh wow. All right, so these are pearls.
Yeah, so what I brought today is a selection of natural pearls, all natural pearls coming from the Tennessee River.
You know, a lot of times you think about pearls coming from places very far away from us, you know, China, Japan, Tahiti, but these are pearls, all natural pearls from right in our backyard.
Yeah, exactly. So we have over 300 species of mussels in the United States, and all varieties of the mussels also provide us with natural pearls. In the case of natural pearls, if you were to swim out or go out into a body of water and you were lucky enough that day to find a mollusk and open it up, you might be, 1 in 10,000 chance, find a natural pearl inside. So that statistic also doesn't include what the size of the pearl is. So you can imagine a little seed pearl might come out or a very large pearl, but the percentage of the larger pearls coming out naturally is very, very rare. So I've brought together here a rare collection of natural pearls from the Tennessee River.
There's a lot of different shapes, sizes, colors here on the table. From natural pearls, that's what you're gonna get, right? A lot of variation.
A lot of variation, it's up to Mother Nature. It's very rare to find more of the symmetrical ones. It's less than like 5% of the natural pearls that come out of the waters that are gonna be in this more symmetrical. So you're gonna find more of these organic shapes that's created. The way natural pearls are also formed, there's some theories about them. One of them is where a parasitic snail or worm finds its way into the soft body of the mussel or the mollusk, and it reacts. It begins to form the layers of nacre over this parasitic snail or worm.
Oh.
So this is one of the theories. So all it takes is just a little bit of something to create this very perfect situation to create the mysterious natural pearl.
Okay, I really like this one because it looks a little bit like a feather to me.
Well, you nailed it. That's exactly what we call that. We call it a feather pearl or a wing-shaped pearl. Yeah, so it's named for its actual shape. And the pearls that come out of the Tennessee River have different shapes and formations. So the feather or the wing shape is one of the more plentiful of the shapes. Of course, we have many Baroque shapes. We also have what we call the button shapes, which is this one here, which is more flat on the bottom and domed on the top. Of course, we have the symmetrical rounds and ovals. We also have, here's a good one. Here's one of the snail formations. You can see the snail formation there.
Kind of looks like a mushroom.
It does. We also have what we call the rosebud. That would be this one, which looks more like budding roses, where you would see that it's just budding into itself.
So it has all these cool, like, different colors. So do those all come from the shell?
Yes, absolutely. So the mother shell can create the color tones of the pearls as well. Like here's a bluefish shell that provides all of those colors that we were just looking at.
The pink that's gonna create the pink on the pearl from the color of the nacre in the shell, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. The majority of the shells that we have in the United States are more of the white and silvery gray tones, so it's more rare to have the pink pearls. So this is the washboard shell, also known as the Megalonysis nervosa, and it creates pearls that are more white, silvery gray, with a lot of the rainbow overtones.
The shape of it is also influenced by the type.
It could be, yes. So this has a larger body to it, so it has more space to create and grow pearls.
Ah, okay. And does that wing shape come from the way that this is ridged?
It comes from an area of the shell up in here. This is actually a pearl that just grows very close to that area, so it can be the shape can be determined by where it's growing in the animal.
So what type of shell are you most likely to find pearls in?
Well, all of them are going to produce some sort of pearl, or what scientists might call a calcareous concretion. But when we're harvesting the shells, it's only legal to take certain species out of the water because we don't want to take anything that's been threatened or endangered. Well, these are some of the larger, more unique shapes, but I also brought you some visual aids to help us understand.
Wow.
So these are all natural pearls as well, coming from the Tennessee River.
Wow. This is a lot to be all natural and coming from one location.
Yes. This was sort of to give you the idea about the size, the shapes, and also the coloration, and that there's more of the white shells, so we have more white pearls available.
I guess it kind of goes to show how rare these big ones are.
Yes.
When most of what you're getting is like this size.
Smaller sizes. That's
okay,
exactly
cool.
right.
So a lot of these that you have here are really light white pearls. Is that more common to find than the colored ones?
Yes, there's more species that are white interior, so that's why. But you can see in this variation of this bag that there's some that are white, maybe even some that have some golden highlights to them, that they all come from a shell that has a white interior. They just have the different variations of colors.
And then you also have these pink, purpley colors here.
This bag shows you a nice variation of the natural color pinks that can be very saturated pink, purple, or lilacs, faint tangerine tones, some silvery gray tones in there. But they all come from very similar shells to the blue fur, where the interior is a pink interior.
Okay, I love these, but I understand you have another box for us.
I do.
All right, let's see it.
Do it.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is not what we've been looking at. This is very different. Ooh, look at that guy. I think by looking at this, I can tell that these are not Tennessee pearls.
Correct. So we have 4 different species of mollusks here. So we have a marine snail, which is the Stromboscygus or the queen conch, which you see often, right? When you go on vacation, you see these a lot. They're used as decorations. The queen conch is edible. And so what happens is these shells are harvested and they find natural pearls in them, and they range in these variety of pink colors.
This is very large. Are all of these queen conch going to be about this size? Or
That's actually a small one. So I brought one that I could hold and bring with me. They can grow quite large. Actually, they live in the Caribbean off the coast of Florida. This is what we call the pink pearl. That's what it's sort of been coined, the name, the pink pearl. And specific to the conch is the fact that it contains what we call a flame structure. So if you look at it with a loop, you can see a little bit of what we call flaming in these pearls. Now, not every conch pearl will have the flame in it, but if it does, it's very unique to see that.
I would never have expected pearls to have that.
Well, we can move on to the east coast of North America, and we come up with the Quahog clam. Mercenaria is the name of it, and it produces pearls like this. Now this one, obviously this shell can produce anything from this deep purple and then all the way through to this color range as well. So
okay, that's cool. And you said the east coast of North America?
Yes, and the Quahog clam is used also for food. So oftentimes they'll gather the shells, create clam chowder, and in the process they'll find natural pearls in them. Now, in talking about the conch pearl and the Quahog clam pearl, they both have a porcelaneous luster. They don't have the nacreous luster of the other natural pearls from the Tennessee River, because those shells have nacre coating. This has more of a porcelaneous secretion.
All right, what about this guy?
So this is a scallop. We call it the Mano de Leon. Mano de Leon means the hand of the lion, quite literally. You want to turn it over and see the backside. So it's got all kind of colors in it, and also it produces these types and colors of pearls as well.
And where is this one found?
This one's in Baja, California, in Mexico.
And these are the pearls that it can produce?
These are the pearls that produced. So you can kind of see the outside looks more orangey, but the interior does have these maroon and I call it banded or ombre colorations.
So you were talking about with the freshwater Tennessee pearls, it's super rare to find them, especially in large sizes. Is that going to be the same for these?
Yes, absolutely. So the statistic of finding a natural pearl is 1 in 10,000. But to find them in these particular animals, it's still 1 in 10,000, but you have to realize we're not harvesting as many of these as we do those for the nucleus. So there's just less available on the market. And then when you look at the higher quality, the larger sizes, those go into the less percentages, more rare categories.
Now let's move on to this guy.
Yeah, so this is the spiny oyster. And I happened to be visiting down in South America This spiny oyster has been used, they carved the actual shell and used the shell beads as money. And so this shell is very revered in that region, but it also produces some very unique natural pearls as well. And here's one of them.
This color of pink, again, is unique from the other pinks that we're seeing. And it's like almost more of a band of color.
Many of the natural pearls coming out of the spiny oyster can be banded, and you'll see the gradations from more of a white tone to sort of a pinky, and then on into the orange, and then even into the deep reds.
Yeah.
The more coloration you can find, the more valuable they are.
Yeah. Is this also a non-nacreous pearl?
Exactly. It's still calcite and aragonite. It's just in different percentages in formation.
This is really fun, but I understand that you have another box.
Oh, I do.
Oh, wow. Do I see a pearl
Well,
in the shells?
maybe.
Oh, that's cool.
So we'll start with this one because I think this one has the most notable curiosity to it. So we have a natural blister pearl here. Actually, you can see where pearls were sort of forming down in here on both sides, right? But the real interest of this one is this pearl here.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a pearl.
Yes. So we were talking earlier about the wing pearls and where they grow in the shell, right? And so this one happened to be pulled out of the waters by a specific diver that my father knew. And so we call this the hidden treasure, and it's right there, and it is a wing pearl. It literally was in its own pearl sac, in its own membrane, and when the shell was opened, the pearl fell out of its pearl sac.
Oh, that's so cool.
This one is from the Tennessee River. This is a pigtoe shell.
Okay, let's talk about these because this doesn't look like it's entirely pearls in here. Are they called periwinkles?
I think they're called periwinkles, yeah.
Cute. They're snail shells?
They're snail shells. Basically, I put them all in this little box here to sort of show that the idea about natural pearls being formed from parasitic snails, you can see the snail formation growth in each one of these pearls. And so I put them alongside each other to sort of give you the visual aid. I did bring with us one of the largest examples of a snail formation pearl that has been on exhibit in museums. It's been featured in the National Geographic magazine. It is the largest documented snail formation natural pearl that comes from the Tennessee River.
Wow.
And it's huge.
Yeah, this is really big, and I see it's called Darwin.
I call it Darwin because it's sort of the beginning. It's theorized that it grew in the mussel for over 70 years to grow to this size.
I see that it's over 80 carats.
It is. It's really quite famous because of its size. I mean, the beautiful luster, it doesn't have really any imperfections. It's perfectly imperfect, let's say.
Let's go here, because I see that at least one of these is a cross section.
It is. This is a natural pearl cross section, and so if you were to look at it up close, you would see it looks like a tree stump, right?
Yeah.
Year after year of growth. So we were talking earlier about how there's a nacreous secretion and there's a conchylan, and there's a nacreous secretion and there's a conchylan. So when you see the rings there, you can almost read how many years it took to form that pearl. That's not an exact science on it because it could be that there was a very heavy period of rain for 1 month in that particular summer.
I guess this little dot in the center, that's the nucleus?
That's the nucleus, which would have been natural. It could have been a parasitic snail, an epithelial cell that was floating around.
And I'm seeing like it changes color kind of throughout. So if you had found this earlier, it might not be this color.
Correct.
Okay.
It could be slightly more golden, or it would have been mostly in a white range, but with a slight variation.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to think about. Depending on how long or how far into the process of creating the pearl you're harvesting them, that's going to affect what it looks like. When you get the perfect, ideal white pearl, that's just kind of by chance.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, next year it could be a different color.
Could be.
Wow.
A variation of a light golden or more blue overtones. So this is another cross section. It's to show you this. The other one you were holding was more of a round pearl that I cut in half. This one is more of a Baroque pearl, and it's really just to show how the interior looks as well.
What's this one?
I was sorting through pearls as I usually did when I was a kid, and I ran across this one. I said, "Oh, Dad, this looks like a woolly mammoth or a elephant of some sort." So really, I brought this today to sort of show that natural pearls are in the eyes of the beholder and what you create, what you design from them. I saw a woolly mammoth or an elephant.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the pearls that you're wearing.
So we were talking earlier about natural pearls and the formations of them and how the majority of natural pearls are very Baroque. It's very rare to be natural round pearls, right? So what I'm wearing today is a 1 in 10,000 each pearl, natural pearl from the Tennessee River. It took 25 years for my father to put this together. And so it was featured in National Geographic magazine as well as it's been on many museum tours. And we call it the wedding necklace because my father, for my wedding in 1996, he said, Gina, I would love for you to wear the natural pearl strand that we collected over 25 years.
Wow.
So I call it the wedding necklace as well.
That's so special.
Yeah.
So on this channel, we always take a closer look at one of our favorite pieces from the episode. So I think it's time to choose, but I don't know how I'm going to because there's so many amazing things on the table right now. So do you know what you're gonna choose?
I think I do.
Okay, what are you gonna choose?
I'm gonna choose this one.
Okay.
Yeah, but this one just happens to have this amazing coloration to it. If you turn it in every different direction, you might see a flash of blue or green or bronze. I don't know, this is talking to me.
Okay, so I think I'm going to go with this one. I love the 2 different colors on it as well. And I think the shell it comes from as well is just so much fun. So that kind of influenced me to choose this one. So let's take a closer look. And I have great news for you guys watching because a lot of these really unique pearls on the table are for sale. So make sure you check the links in the description below. All right, Gina, thank you so much again for bringing all of these beautiful pearls. And everybody tell Gina thank you down in the comments. And while you're there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so that you don't miss any future videos. Bye.